Right, so I guess the first thing I need to say is don't trust anything I say, because I've just struggled to get onto my own slides, so that's a perfect start. I came to do my first talk here in 2007, and it feels kind of emotional for me because I did my first IWMW talk in York and then ended up coming to work here. And I still have that feeling in the pit of my stomach right now that I did back in 2007. Particularly this room, it's quite intimidating, so you'll have to bear with me. I've spoken to a few people this morning, and one of the key things that everyone says about this conference is it feels a bit like therapy. It feels like everyone can share their stories and their experiences, and that it's not about one-upmanship, it's about actually we're all in the same boat and we can all help each other. So I've kind of taken that quite literally. So my stories are a blend of work stories, but also some personal stories to kind of really kind of move on that idea of this is a big therapy session, so please bear with me. As Brian said, I've moved around quite a bit, and I think I'm quite rare in terms of working in professional services in higher education, whereas I think our academic colleagues are used to kind of working in different universities and up and down the country and internationally. I don't think we do that quite a bit as much as our academic colleagues, and so I'm going to draw on the different experiences that I've had from three very different universities as part of my talk today. So, as Brian said, I started out at Edge Hill, started working there in 2000, moved to Bath in 2007, and moved up to York in 2013. And the experiences from each of those places are just vastly different. And I think that's really interesting, and I've learned an awful lot along the way. In York, my team now, I'm responsible for marketing, so I'm responsible for everything in terms of the brand of the university, recruitment, communications, research, internal comms. In marketing, we support all of our academic departments, so we're a fully centralised team, so we support our 28 independent departments. We don't really do faculties in the way that other universities do, and we look after digital, social and print, and it all comes together in one team. But essentially what the team is content, because everything that we do is around telling stories and communicating the strengths and values of the University of York. But really, my job is about looking after people. And we've got designers, developers, we've got real creatives, we've got project people who just like to get their head down and take things from A to B. But we're all someone's daughter, husbands, friends, so on and so forth. And the complexities, I think, that you have as a manager in terms of managing people, in terms of their individuality, but also the work that you want to do. I don't think we talk about that enough, so I thought I'll use this platform to talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to take you through 10 lessons that I learned in my career. I'm not trying to pretend that everything's rosy, and I'll be quite frank about things that I think have worked really effectively and things that haven't. And I'm going to be really honest, because again, not sure that I think we're honest enough about how difficult some things are. So lesson number 1, having worked at 3 different universities, I can say hand on heart there is no magic formula to getting digital on the table at a university. And what I mean by that is you can't just kind of take a cookie cutter set of things and say, if only I did those things, I would get what this university have or this university have, and everyone would suddenly take us seriously. And I know that through bitter experience. So when I was at Edge Hill University back in 2000, I can't remember the phrase Brian just used then, but these kind of boom days for web, everyone's taking it really, really seriously. Everyone started talking about this thing called Web 2, and then Facebook came along and you could share videos on YouTube, and it was all really exciting, and everyone was really, really excited about the web and how it was growing up and what you could do with it. So I took a paper to what was then our kind of executive board to get them really excited about the potential of what we could do with the website. Really wanted to get them seriously thinking about the potential of this tool. So spoke to them about all the fantastic things that we were doing and all the fantastic things that we could do. And my reception was this. The team, the senior team, were absolutely blown away with the kind of things that the digital team at Edge Hill were doing and just wanted more of it. And we had a license really, and I know some of my colleagues are in the room today, but we kind of had a license to do what we want and suggest what we wanted to do, and it was fantastic. And we got more resource and we got more support, and we did some really incredible things, which led to me coming to this conference to talk about what cool things we were doing. So then, confidently, boldly, I got a job at the University of Bath. And I had an expectant team who were seeing what I'd done at Edge Hill and the work that we'd been doing, and were sat in this office at the bottom of campus just waiting for really big things to happen and somebody to kind of swan in and make everyone take it really, really seriously and get loads of resource and so on and so forth. So I whipped out my magic formula of the things that I'd done at Edge Hill, said, look, everyone else is doing Web 2, look what Edge Hill are doing, they're doing these really, really incredible things. And my reception was kind of like, yeah, okay. So I dusted myself off and I thought, I can't just let this go. There's more that we can do with digital, there's more that we should be thinking about. So I went back to the team, got our heads together, recognised that Bath's a very research-intensive university and actually we needed a different approach. So we just got loads of data, and we got loads of information, and I went back with some killer stats, one of which, and it'll never leave me, is our 404 is the 6th most accessed page. Come on, you know, is that what we want for this university? And suddenly, okay, they're taking me seriously now. So I knew that that adapted approach was going to get us somewhere where we needed to be. Obviously, because it's a university, we had to set up a committee to see what we would do about that. But we did pull together a committee. We did end up investing an awful lot in digital, and we did end up making some really dramatic changes for that time period, which was great. So you can imagine when I came to York, the expectation from, again, some of my colleagues in the room was quite high. You know, Edge Hill did these great things, Bath grew the digital team and started doing these great things, and my digital team at York, when I was here, was 3 people, sat looking at me quite expectantly thinking, what's going to happen, you know, what's going to happen now? So I whipped out the formula. I knew that I couldn't just talk about Web 2, I had to bring in some data, mix it all up a little bit. And went to the board with a really compelling case, which all my colleagues fed into, to say why we have to take digital seriously. And they thought about it, and they thought about it some more. And we got a new developer who's in this room now, who has gone from strength to strength, I might add. And so it was a different approach and a different outcome. And I want to kind of explain sort of why, and the things that I've learned from that. And the key thing is that you can't just read a book and learn how to get everyone to buy into things, or listen to someone like me talk and get this kind of list of actions that you need to go back to your institution and do, and everyone take it seriously, or pay a consultant to come and tell them and then they'll all kind of do it. Because you have to really understand the context that you're operating in and that your individual institutions are operating in. So in the case of Edge Hill, at the time, they were a really heavily recruiting university, really trying to make their mark. So when you go with a bright, shiny idea about doing something different, they're going to embrace that, because that's very much about the culture and what they were trying to do. In the case of Bath, I was talking to people when it was tuition fees were coming in, and there was a recognition that the university landscape was going to become more competitive. So, you know, they needed to take these things seriously. By the time I'd got to York, all of that kind of had happened. And what I didn't realise at the time, when I was starting to have these conversations initially, is that whilst I'm going in with a really compelling case around digital, which everybody agrees with, it's not that my colleagues disagreed that it was important, it's just that before me I've got someone going in saying we need to invest in a new building, and after me I've got someone in coming saying that they need to invest in student mental health, for example. And it's not really understanding that kind of context and the kind of politics that goes on that can sometimes make some of your what are really great ideas fail. So I think it's just remembering the learning from my experiences, really understand that political context before you're making these kind of asks, and make sure you understand the nuances of all of those things. But also, I think it's about playing the political game, and just going into a group of very senior leaders to say, this is what we need to do, X, Y, and Z, is not really going to cut it. So it's about thinking, how can I get my point across and get this on the agenda and get this on the table at every single opportunity. And I've been really fortunate to work with some really exceptional people who do some really exceptional stuff. And our approach really is been about getting information across about the good things that we're doing as frequently as possible. So if you're talking in a meeting about student mental health, you can talk about some of the things you could do online to support those things. If you're talking about recruitment and challenges in recruitment, you can demonstrate some of the things you've been doing around recruitment, and slowly but surely kind of understand that politics, understand who you need to be talking to and who you need to be sharing stories with, so that you get digital and investment and the kind of the management of really good content, you get that on the table. And I think that's a really key lesson, that it's been a painful journey to learn, but they are political environments and there is a lot going on, and institutions are dealing with and juggling an awful lot, and the digital aspect is not the centre of everybody's world, unfortunately. So my third lesson kind of builds on from that, in that there is a world beyond digital. And when I came to my first talk here in 2007, I can't remember what I said, but I remember thinking I shouldn't have said that to a room full of people that work in this area. And I feel like I shouldn't say this to all of you, but I'm going to anyway. In 2017, we restructured marketing at York, and we centralised everything and built this team. And very much at the heart of our team were content producers. And we purposefully put content producers at the centre of the team, and they were digital, print, social specialists. So we were moving away from the idea of digital content producers and a digital team that just kind of did everything. And the kind of dream of the centralised team was that we have people looking at all of our content all together all of the time. I'm not going to pretend that it's perfect, and if any of the team are in the room at the moment, they'll tell you about how overwhelmed they are at the kind of scale of the type of things that they're dealing with. But what we really wanted to do was ensure that our prospectus and our web pages and the things that we're putting on social media are not disconnected, because we're all storytellers and we need to connect these things up, and we need to make sure that these things talk together. And I think we've had a degree of success with that. But we've still got a long way to go. But the digital principles that we adopted as a team, using evidence, being consistent, showing don't tell, all of those things apply to all of those things that we do. And it's kind of trying to take things like the print prospectus, the things that routinely we know we are going to have to produce, and thinking, how do we apply those principles and how do we start to think about that across everything? So for us, content sits at the heart of everything, but it's not purely thinking about digital. Again, I'm going to say something a little bit contentious about ideals and idealists. I think when you work in digital, you have access to an enormous amount of data that you don't really have in other areas. So in terms of usability and user journeys and how people use your websites and so on and so forth, you've got really, really incredible data sets, which means that you know, and I'm sure every one of you in this room will know, the things that your university websites need to do. And that's brilliant, and we should embrace that, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. But sometimes you have to learn to be pragmatic, and you have to learn to push on this or to let this one go. And I think as digital professionals, as marketeers, we need to kind of understand that, or I certainly feel we need to understand that and be conscious of that a little bit more. And it's great to work with people who are passionate about exactly what we need to do and where we need to go, but learn when to temper that. In 2017, when we built our team, we had a 3-year transformation plan for marketing, which we're still trying to stick to. But what it really taught us is you need a strong plan and you need a good vision, but you do have to accept that things will not go your way at every turn. So in year 1, it was very much about service delivery and delivering some improvements to tools. Year 2, which is where we are now, it's about demonstrating effectiveness of what we're doing and doing these new innovations and really getting people to think quite differently. We don't want people to come to us with a solution. We want people to come to us with a problem, and we want to develop these really creative solutions to really help people. But we work in a university and we have to recognise that sometimes it doesn't always go that way. Not everybody sees us as these great professionals who really know what they're doing and can do everything for us. And this is just an example really of we've got a plan, we've got a journey, we know what we're doing, but we've got to be pragmatic sometimes when things are difficult. And as I say, decide where you push things and where you don't. And I think that's kind of my macro level example. But on a micro level, you know, if we just stuck to our ideals and what we know and pressed ahead, all of our websites, homepages would look like that. And none of them do. Because you have to, there's lots of stakeholders and there's lots of people and there's lots of voices. And also there's lots of good reasons why you wouldn't necessarily do that. I have been convinced during my time at York that some research information on a homepage is a good thing to do, and it's relevant, and yeah, nobody reads it and nobody clicks through on the links, but actually it says something about who we are and who we are as an institution. So we have to take these things on board, and it's great that we know where we're going and what things should be, but again it comes back to really understanding your organisation. The fifth thing is something that I just don't think we think about enough. And it really hit home for me last week. I don't know how many people saw the Reading tweet, but Reading very boldly put out a tweet about their refugee scholarships for refugees. And they did two really interesting things. One is they totally owned it. We've given people these scholarships. We think it's a fantastic thing to do. And the second thing they did is use a real informal language they told people to jog on if they didn't like it. And the internet, the Twitter and social media went absolutely wild. Naturally, we tried to piggyback on the back of that and get some of our own material out there as well to say some of the great things we were doing. But it really kind of hammered home for me the fact that a university standing for what it believes in is so, so powerful. And I just don't think we see it enough. And I think I'm talking about it now because none of us really do it as much as we should. And I'm going to bore you a second and just take a little detour to my own personal experience of kind of loving a brand and feeling about a brand, and you'll have to bear with me for a second. Molten Brown, I don't know if many people know it, is very expensive, smelly stuff, so shower gels and body lotions. And it's the brand, when I'm talking about branding, it's the brand that I always want to talk about and kind of connect with because of how it makes me feel. It's ridiculously expensive, but I kind of like that because when I buy it occasionally and not that often, I feel like I'm really treating myself. It's a product where I actually keep the packaging in the bag that I got it in because I can't bear to throw it away because it's so beautiful. It makes me feel like I'm treating myself, that I'm worth it, that, you know, I've worked hard, this is a good reward for that. If someone buys it from me, I feel quite special. If I go into the store, they make me feel incredible. I'm totally worth spending £17.50 on shower gel and totally their target market and all of these things. And, you know, it's a brand that resonates with me, but it makes me, whether you hate it or like it, and think, my God, you can spend that much money on a shower gel, that's ridiculous. But it makes me feel something, and it makes me feel I reflect something by being a customer and buying those kind of products. And I wonder, and the Reading thing really got me wondering, what does being a student at any university really say about them? And are we thinking enough about that emotional connection and really standing up enough for who we are and how we're different? And what would a student say about being at any one of our universities? And I know at York, I was talking to some colleagues earlier, we've done the brand perception exercise, we've developed our brand positioning, we've got our key messages. But actually, if I'm being completely honest, have we really, really, really addressed this and been brave enough? No, I don't think we have. And I think for me, Reading this last week just shone a spotlight of that, the power of actually standing up for what you believe in. And as universities, my God, we stand up for things. So I think we could be much braver about that. So on to the more personal reflections, if you'll bear with me. As I said, I am taking this opportunity to talk about people as much as I am about the experience that I've had in my various roles managing digital and marketing teams. because I think it's important and because I don't really think we talk about that enough. And as I said, I feel like I'm in good company with all of you, because it does really feel like there's an openness and good conversations that we can have here. So I'm going to take you through 6 of my lessons. The first is, introverts are ace. If any of you are introverts, pat yourself on the back. Doing something like this as an introvert is really bloody hard. It doesn't get easier. I feel just as nervous and have the same butterflies in my stomach now as I did in 2007 when I did this for the first time, despite the fact that I've done it loads. I grew up being called shy and quiet, and the more people called me shy and quiet, the more shyer and quieter I was, and it became so difficult for me that I just found it so difficult to talk to people. When I miraculously somehow got the job at Edge Hill, I was on a management team. Every single time we had a team meeting, I blushed, and everyone could see my face was going bright red. I didn't know if I was going to say this, but I'm just going to chuck it out there. I had opinions. I got voted to be the staff governor, but I went to governors' meetings. I was too afraid to say anything. And it got to 4 meetings in, and I thought, well, I can't stop talking now because the spotlight will be on me. So just sat there and kind of put up. And I was sort of embarrassed to be this person that felt so shy, and I found it so difficult. And then I got sent on some leadership training, and a man called John Cater, who's the Vice-Chancellor of the Edge Hill University, came onto this training, and he delivered a termly address at the beginning of every term, funnily enough, and he sat on the front table. He kind of had this particular way of sitting, and he addressed everybody, and he was like the most confident, articulate person that I'd ever known, and he was brilliant. And he sat there in front of me at this leadership training and said, I don't feel comfortable with this. I sit in this particular way because that's how I get through it, and that's my sort of thing that makes me get through it. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel any more comfortable now than I did back then. I feel an introvert. I don't like networking. I find that really awkward. But I do it. It's part of the job. And it just taught me, it just kind of shone this light on the fact that you can get out there and you can do these things, and you can put yourself in the spotlight, and you can kind of learn to fake it. And I'll say a little bit about that later. But we are brilliant, and we have brilliant ideas, and we shouldn't kind of feel confined to not do things because we're introverts. And actually, we need to have more people celebrating introverts, in my opinion. And for those of you that are introverts, I'll not see you in the bar later on. Lesson 7. I'm just going to make you all feel a little bit sad for a second. But I think it's really important that people say this as well. It's really, really, really okay to not be okay. As Brian said earlier, in 2011, I had twins, boy and girl. How perfect and blessed is that? Except it was the hardest time of my life so far. I found having kids so unbelievably difficult that I just could not talk about it. You don't say that having kids is hard. You don't say you're not enjoying having the babies at home and loving walking up and down the street with a pram. You don't talk about that stuff. So I just didn't talk about that stuff. But I found it hard. I lived in Bath. I lived away from my family. My husband was at work all day. One of them, the little boy, the bigger one, can't get my left and right, but the little boy, he had reflux, he cried all the time, I couldn't hold my daughter, it was really, 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 really hard. So what does any self-respecting person suffering from postnatal depression do? She goes back to work. And she goes back to work when they're 7.5 months and wrestles with the whole nursery and juggling childcare and so on. And she goes back to a new boss and a team with their ideals here, and this is how we have to do digital, and a new boss who wants to do it all of that way, and sandwiches herself in the middle of this, and she cracks. You know, I literally had this moment where I woke up one morning and I begged my husband not to leave me because I just could not function anymore, and it was really hard. And I took 6 weeks off work for depression and stress, And I went away and kind of got some help. Someone else took care of the kids for a while and kind of gave myself that time and found myself again. And I came back to work and there'd been whisperings and murmurings, why she's off for 6 weeks again, she's having another baby, you know, all of this kind of what's going on. And I just thought, I sat in my office one day and I just thought, I'm going to have to tell them the truth. I felt sort of compelled to tell them the truth. So I walked into the office, largely males in the office at the time, with the exception of one of my colleagues up there, largely male, largely introverts. And I said, oh, you all know I've been off 6 weeks. The thing is, had postnatal depression, came back. It's been a bit stressful, really suffered with stress, couldn't do it anymore. And I was just completely honest and open about what had happened. My reaction, as you can expect, oh my God, she's talking about really personal stuff. And it was awkward, I'm not going to lie. But the really powerful thing from that was that afterwards, after I'd walked away and they'd kind of awkwardly gone back to their desks, is people came into my office and just went, my God, thank you for saying that, because I've suffered with this and I struggle with that. And thank you for being honest and actually telling it how it is. And I hope my colleagues now will testify that I'm open about talking about this kind of stuff. And I think it's really important that you are, and that we all recognise and realise that we're all humans and we all have stuff that we're dealing with, and it's hard, and you don't just put it at the door when you come into work, because sometimes it bleeds in, and you know, life can get too much and life can get really tough. And it's not just because you've had kids and one of them cries all the time. Sometimes it just is. And I think it's important that we talk about it. So I'm kind of sorry for hijacking this presentation with that, but I thought it was important to say. Lesson 8, be a cheerleader. I spoke about John Cater from Edge Hill before, because he's someone that sticks in my mind as what a leader should really be. I saw some colleagues from Edge Hill before and I said, Edge Hill still has my heart, and it does, because this man and the leadership team really made you feel a part of what they were about. They really feel like you had a place, they knew your names, they wanted to kind of chat to you informally. There was no, you know, I'm the big important, you're just kind of nobody who looks after the website. It really made you feel a part of that community. And I think I recognise now, Dan, wherever he is, likes to tell me about, you know, that I'm fairly senior now in my role and I have a responsibility for people, which kind of freaks me out. But, you know, I think it's important that we look at leaders that we aspire to be. We think about the kind of characteristics that we like in people, and that we try and emulate some of those things as much as we can and make people feel something, feel part of an institution. But quite critically, I've been doing a lot of work recently, a lot of discussion groups following the discussions around career progression for women, and around gender pay gap and some of the challenges that women in particular feel. And I think we as women have a responsibility to be cheerleaders. And what I mean by that is a responsibility to try and motivate people, try and encourage people to do something quite differently, try and recognise some of the challenges that people are dealing with, and really kind of be there for each other and try and help each other. And that's one of the reasons I love this conference, because even more broadly, I think that's what this is about. This is about us helping each other and not kind of saying, oh, you're not doing quite as well as we are because we've got 8 people and you're still only on 4, but actually helping and sharing and trying to provide that support network. My second to last story is don't be too pig-headed to learn from others. When I was at the University of Bath, I really felt I'd managed this team, I'd grown this team, we'd made huge strides in terms of the content and information we were developing online. We'd brought in faculty teams. I really felt that we'd moved things and moved the direction of digital and more broadly marketing in the time I'd been there. And as I'd said, I came back from maternity leave, I had a new boss, and he sat me down one day and he said, you know, everybody hates kind of what you're doing and you've not engaged your stakeholders. And I was just like, you don't know what you're talking about. because I took this paper to the board, I took this paper to the board, I did this presentation here, you know, don't tell me I didn't engage my stakeholders. And he just said, you didn't. And I couldn't take it. And I found it really, really difficult for someone to come in and criticise what I thought was this incredible thing that I'd done. And I found it really, really difficult to kind of take that on and learn anything from it. And ultimately, I left the university, and it wasn't just that reason. But it was one of the things that kind of stuck with me, where I thought, you don't appreciate just what an incredible thing that I've done. And I had this chip on my shoulder for quite a while. And then in 2017, as I'd said, we're restructuring marketing at York. And there's a lady who's our Director of Information Services. I don't know if any of you will know her. Her name's Heidi Fraser-Krauss. She's a bit like my John Cater. I sort of have her on this pedestal up here. And I really, really look up to this lady. And I really like what she stands for and what she's about. And she was really supportive of the marketing restructure, which took some of her resource and moved it into the central team. She was a huge advocate for what we were trying to do. And I saw her in a cafe one day, and we were just kind of having a chat about how everything was going. And she'd said, I expected to have more communication from you through this process. And I said, oh, you know, I've been busy, you know, I've been doing this and I've been doing that. And yeah, no, I kept meaning to tell people, but you know what it's like. And she just looked at me really pointedly and said, you dropped the ball, Alison. And honestly, it was like a dagger through my heart, this woman that I respected so much, to actually say, you've messed up here. And it was at that moment that I felt incredibly disappointed in myself that I had, but it kind of took me back to this place at Bath, where I was just too pig-headed to learn and understand that somebody with more experience than me, who'd actually gone out and talked to people that I clearly hadn't, I was too pig-headed to learn anything from that. And I think there was a real lesson for me in, don't be so pig-headed. If you don't like it, go away, chew it over, think about it, but try and learn the lesson from doing that. And I hope I'll never, ever do that again, because it really took somebody to say something to me that massively disappointed me for me to kind of learn that was true. And actually, if I was being honest, I was in my comfort zone. I'm quite comfortable telling the board and so on and so forth what we need to do, but to get out with people who might feel something about what we're doing, it was a little bit more challenging, and so I didn't do it as much as I should have done. And the final one, feel the fear and do it anyway. I did this talk in 2007 because I was seeing a coach at the university, at Hull University, and wanted to overcome this fear I had. I knew I was somebody with lots of opinions, but this fear that I had of really talking and putting myself out there and talking about the things that I believed in and felt were really important. And stupidly, I could have gone to any committee in the university and talked about something, but I decided I'd just go for broke, and I put in a submission for the web managers workshop, and Brian accepted it, and I ended up talking in front of, I think, 200 people or so. And it was a baptism of fire, but I never looked back from that because it gave me the confidence to do different things in my career. So for me, it was really monumental, and probably why I feel kind of emotional about this today, because it was a really, really big deal for me. So I just want to end by saying, if you've liked anything that I said, then feel the fear, put yourself forward, do some of this kind of stuff. If you think that I talk rubbish, then feel the fear and put yourself forward and do some of this stuff, because unless you do, Brian will ask me back again, and you'll have to listen to the waffle again next year. Thank you very much.
Wow, wasn't that amazing? I have to, is this on? Yep. I have to say that most of the submissions for talks that came in, we reviewed the abstracts, we decided if it was relevant, we decided to... But for Alison, we says, oh no, Alison's going to talk, and it doesn't matter what she talks about, because we know she's great. And that was absolutely amazing. That was really fantastic. And thanks for sharing all of those very personal stories. So we have time, we have about a couple of minutes, probably about 3 questions. Claire and I have the voice mics, so can I have a hand for any questions? Kirsty, any remote ones? Okay. Claire?
We should not worn wedges.
And if people can introduce themselves in the name of their institution when they ask the questions, remember it's being recorded.
Hi Alison, it's Mike McConnell here from the University of Aberdeen. I'm one of the old lags, old enough to remember your first talk. I was just saying to my newbie colleague here, Megan, put her on the spot, that your first talk in 2007, I would never have guessed the honesty you've shown here today, and that's really courageous, because I remember it was the talk of the conference, and everyone was going away saying, oh God, she's amazing, Alison. I mean, I would never have understood that you had such self-doubt, and so it's really courageous to come and do that today. So it's just a comment, really. Well done.
Thank you.
Right at the back. Claire, they are playing this game, keeping us fit. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Paul Bradley. I'm from Equify. I'm a commercial supplier. I've got a question. If you had to pick out of that 10, what would be your number 1?
Probably because it's so personal, it's talking about mental health and the comment that Mike's just made, actually being honest. Because I think the thing that I've always had a thing that anyone more senior than me, I'm so intimidated by them and they're so different to me. And actually, I think it's because people aren't honest enough. Lots of people find this kind of stuff hard. I think actually the people that find it easier are in the minority. So for me, that's the kind of biggest lesson: be honest and be human.
And do you find the people that work for you reflect that back? They're happy to
Hope
talk to you about
so.
that
Some of
stuff?
them are in the audience.
Okay. Well, I don't want to put them
They'll
on
tell
the
me
spot.
later.
Cheers.
Time for one more question. And if not...
Can I come back and work for you?
These are the opportunities, so you might be meeting opportunities to meet future bosses and the like. As in fact, Alison, you didn't tell that story. Do you want to tell your story about when you first spoke and who your future boss was there?
Oh, Peter Reeder.
Peter Reeder.
You can tell it.
Right. So Alison spoke, and as Mike said, it was absolutely fantastic. The head of marketing, was it? A director of marketing, Peter Reeder, was there, spoke the next day. Marketing man takes his tie off, was the title of his talk. And I spoke to him when he got back, and we were saying, Alison, wasn't she great? You know, we should be doing this. Everybody was saying that. Then Alison, if I can tell that story, Alison sent me an email to say, there's a job coming up at Bath University, but you need a degree, and I haven't got a degree. Is it worth me applying? And I said, go for it, because I've spoken to you, and it'll give you the job, I think. You know, it's a real opportunity, so do go for it. So there's all those future career opportunities from speaking at events like this. So thank you, and can we show Alison? I appreciate it.